extend the Céad Míle Fáilte to Mr Vincent Jennings and the people here. I think we all understand the huge energy costs the retail sector has at the moment. Now, Senator Michael McDowell, you have up number.
Curran fáilte rih an aire agus bhfuil tosnú leis an vacant property tax le a whole. This is a joke, and it's a sick joke as well. This government is putting this forward as a measure which is supposed to increase the amount of properties available for, I presume, rent or else for sale in any given year. But let's be clear about what we are dealing with now. We're dealing with a deeply ideologically confused government. And I know the Minister, I'm not referring to the Minister in this respect, I think he is clear-minded on the subject, but some of his colleagues need to take a look in the mirror. We have changed the law in the last 2 years to provide that anybody who lets a house for more than 6 months faces the situation that they cannot, under any circumstances, get back the tenant, get back the home from the tenants, except for 4 stated reasons. Once you're there forever, effectively, unless the landlord requires vacant possession for 1 of 4 reasons. And one of them is that you want to sell the house with vacant possession. And the result has been that a huge proportion of the houses that are now for sale are being sold by landlords. It's roughly 50% are now being sold by landlords. And then the government says they're worried about the increase in rents. But if you diminish the size of stock of rentable property in the way that is being done at the moment, the inevitable consequence is that we will have rising rents. And there is no way out of that. If you cut the amount of houses available for rent, and there are a lot of people who can't afford to buy their houses for one reason or another, rents will increase. So that's the first point. The second point is this, that there was no need to do that. And worse still, the Sinn Féin party are proposing that you can't even get back your property for the purpose of selling it with vacant possession. And that means that you would only be able to recover possession of your property if you intended to redevelop the property or spend a huge amount of money refurbishing it, in which case, under the present law, you have to offer it back to the tenant that you had originally. And it also means that we're in the situation that tenants now, under the laws which have been brought in by this government, I'm sad to say, are now in the position to actually bring in fellow tenants. And the landlord is not entitled to object to that process unless he can show reasonable cause why the fellow tenants should not be regarded as tenants and the original tenants depart the scene. What kind of result do you think that creates for most landlords? They're effectively being dispossessed of their properties, and they're being told in rent pressure zones that they must continue to let the property at way below its market value in circumstances where the alternative is to sell it. And the inevitable consequence has been that it will be sold. So I want to say through the Minister to his colleague Darragh O'Brien, and through the Chair, just to be orderly, that get your act together. If you want private landlords to make properties available for letting, do something to help them. The steps in this bill do not do anything for a landlord who is actually looking for 5 or 10 years ahead and thinking, am I going to have a valuable asset, yes or no? So I want to lay it down on the line. This is an opportunity that is being missed. And the remedial measures in the form of the vacant property tax are going to do nothing. I just looked at the terms of the bill. And for a house to be deemed vacant, it has to be unused as a dwelling by whoever. It doesn't matter whether it's the owner or not who uses it as a dwelling for less than unused for more than 30 days. Less than 30 days a year. And I mean, it's so easily avoided. ask your child to go down and sit in the house for a few weeks, and you're out of it. And the penalty that's provided here is that instead of local property tax, you're obliged to pay 4 times local property tax. And that's the great incentive to get you to let your property on the open market. Landlords are not stupid. They're intelligent people. They have an asset. Probably, in many cases, it's their only major asset, their retirement fund. And they see it being slowly expropriated by this government because of deep ideological confusion. And if Sinn Féin get anywhere near the levers of power, they'll be completely expropriated. But I mean, if we look at the figures, and they are shocking, that 5,600 landlords have left the market this year, and that half of the houses that are on the market are landlords selling off their property. And this is the response of the government to say we'll have a vacant property tax. Now, I can imagine that it might apply to some multinational American company that was holding on to a block of flats that was empty or something, and it might persuade them to get up off their backsides and let their property. I can imagine that it could possibly have that effect. Though, mind you, I have a doubt about it. But in the real world in which most of us live, it will have no effect at all. It'll be easily avoided, and it's just there as a piece of propaganda just being thrown out there. We've introduced a vacant property tax. I'd love to see in 2 years' time what the yield of this self-assessed tax will be. Nobody in their right mind, if they had a vacant property, would allow it to be totally vacant for the prescribed period. And it's so easy to avoid it. You don't even have to be the occupier yourself. You can ask a friend in to live in it for a few weeks, or a friend's child to live in it for a few weeks, and you avoid the tax completely. This is propaganda and a kind of a sticking plaster solution to a very real problem. So I'm sorry if I'm concentrating on one aspect of this bill, because there are good aspects to the bill and there are important things being done which I do support. But I mean, our function here in the Seanad is pretty minimal in relation to finance bills. And I just want to lay it down on the line. The vacant property tax is a sick joke. It is a stunt by a government who's got deeply confused on the residential property market, and in particular in relation to the shortage of rentable accommodation. And I ask through the Chair and through the Minister that the message gets back to Minister Darragh O'Brien: get your act together, act sensibly, act in the real world. This is fantasy politics. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator McDowell.